Imagine being so trained by power that even a courtroom feels like a stage, but sometimes the silence is the loudest verdict. The municipal chamber hums with fluorescent light and patience. Judge Caprio lifts a file, rim of his glasses catching the glare. Case 5172, Miss Danielle Vaughn. She steps forward, 26, posture carved by private schools and corridors where doors open before you knock. A slate-gray designer suit, shoes that never met a sidewalk puddle. She thumbs her phone, screen aglow with strangers' applause. "You're here for speeding in a school zone," Caprio says, voice even. 48 in a 25. She lets a breathy laugh slip. Come on. A technicality, Your Honor. I was late to meet my father's advisor." The clerk stops typing. A juror looky-loo shifts in the last row. Caprio doesn't move. "You find it funny?" "I find it minor," she answers, a smile that learned early to preempt consequences. "There are real crimes out there. This is paperwork." "In my experience," Caprio says, "the most dangerous offense is indifference." She glances back to her phone, then up at him as if to reframe the scene, as if a better angle will appear. The bench refuses to give her one. "Do you admit to the speed?" he asks. "I admit the officer might spend his time more efficiently," she replies, diction smooth as a press release. "We all prioritize." Murmurs scratch the pews. Caprio sets the file down, fingertips resting on the cardboard edge. "Do you believe the law negotiates with priority?" "I believe we're adults," she says. "We can be reasonable." His eyes rest on her the way a carpenter's level rests on a beam, seeking true. "Miss Vaughn," he says, "are you the daughter of Senator Vaughn?" Her chin lifts half an inch. "Yes, so I'm sure we can settle this sensibly." A pause opens like a trap door. Caprio fills it with quiet. When he speaks, it's not a strike, but a measured cut. "When I was a boy," he says, "my father worked 16 hours to pay a $10 fine. He wore out his hands to keep his name clean. $10 was a week of dinners." Her smile thins, as if tightened by an invisible seamstress. "For you, 48 in a school zone is a shrug," Caprio continues. "For a parent crossing with a child, it's a coin toss they can't afford." She swallows. The phone darkens in her grip. "We laugh at comedy," he says, "not at responsibility." Air holds. Even the clock seems to wait for her answer. None comes. The posture stays, but the certitude leaks, slow as air from a tire. Outside, a siren passes and fades. Inside, the judge closes the folder with the softest sound in the room. "She came here wearing a smile," the silence seems to say. "She will leave carrying a mirror." "What do you do, Miss Vaughn?" Caprio asks, pen balanced between two fingers. "I handle my father's communications," she says. "Events, messaging, the campaigns, presentation." "So you build pictures for the public." A small nod. "That's the job, shape what people see." He studies her like a doctor reading a chart. "You're trying it here as well. But this isn't a camera. It's a record." A ripple moves through the benches. She keeps her gaze level, but her thumb searches the dead phone in her hand as if it might cue the next line. "Does your father know you're before me today?" Caprio asks. "He knows," she answers. "He told me not to worry. It's just paperwork." "And you took that as gospel?" "He always settles things," she says, with the faintest shrug. "That's what he does." Caprio sets the pen down. "It's also what he doesn't do that interests me." For the first time, she seems unsure where to place her eyes. The seal on the wall, the flag, the pale tiles, none offer a script. "When did you last see him at home?" Caprio asks. "Without an audience?" She opens her mouth, then closes it, as though checking a calendar that isn't there. We cross paths between flights, she says. He's busy. Busy can be a job, the judge says. It can also be a disguise. Her breath shortens. You think you know my family? I don't, he says gently. I'm asking if you do. The clerk's keys fall silent. The room shrinks to the space between bench and podium. I learned to talk like him, she says, the words softer now. To smooth edges. To make a headline fit. And to expect the world to arrange itself on cue? A beat. She looks down at her shoes, immaculate, unscuffed. Until last year, I never drove myself anywhere. We had drivers. I thought roads were things that happened under other people. Caprio leans back. Today, the wheel is yours, not just the one in a car. She lets out a breath she didn't know she was holding. I didn't mean to be cruel, she says. I was trained to move quickly through problems. Speed is fine on a treadmill, he replies. On streets where children cross, it becomes something else. She nods once, a motion so small it could be missed. The lacquer of certainty has a hairline crack. There's a difference, he says, between managing impressions and meeting consequences. One bends light. The other stands in it. A pause longer than comfort. Then, almost to herself, if he were sitting here, he'd make a joke and change the subject. And if you're sitting here, Caprio says, you can choose not to. She tucks a stray strand of hair behind her ear, a human gesture uncoached by any consultant. The mask doesn't fall. It loosens. Authority isn't a family heirloom, the judge finishes, voice low. It's the choice you make when no one applauds. Caprio turns a page, then closes the folder instead. There's a note in the report, he says. You told the officer your father would call the mayor, that he'd be out of a job by lunch. Do you dispute that? Danielle's jaw moves, measuring words like pills. I was frustrated. I may have overreacted. He was making a scene. Or, Caprio says, you're used to the world stepping aside. He doesn't push the point. He reaches for a small remote. A square of courtroom wall flickers to life. Grainy frame, dash of blue-red reflection. The officer's body cam angle grabs the curb, the stop sign, the bright stencil of school on the pavement. Audio fills the room, no drama, just morning air and her voice, unhurried. You don't understand who you're speaking to. A click of phone camera. I'll send this to my father so he can see how you work. In the gallery, chairs creak, and then go still. The recording shows her smile. Not wolfish, just automatic. A social reflex meeting a uniform. Another line, spoken like weather. We can fix this. Caprio stops the feed. The rectangle winks back to beige paint. He doesn't look triumphant. He looks tired in a way that suggests experience, not age. What strikes me, he says, is that you aren't cruel there. You're absent, like no one else in the frame mattered. She stares at the empty wall as if the image might return and give her a better take. It doesn't. When she turns back, her polish is intact, but something behind it gives. The officer you tried to belittle, Caprio continues, has 19 years on the job. 2 kids. They cross the same school zone you drove through like it was a suggestion. For you, it was a minute gained. For him, it could be the whole of his life, or theirs. Her fingers tighten around the dead phone until the case creaks. I didn't mean... I know, he says quietly. That's the point. Most harm arrives unannounced, dressed as routine. The clerk has stopped typing. The air conditioner hums and then falls silent, as if embarrassed to intrude. In this courtroom, Caprio says, I can impose a number. You will pay it without blinking, and your day will go on. I'm less interested in your card than your compass. He sets the remote down, palms open on the bench. I won't shout at you. Anger is a poor teacher. I'm going to ask you to choose, right here, what you think the lesson should be. She blinks, unprepared for a door swung inward. Choose? Yes? He nods to the empty screen. What would make the person on that video look at the world and see more than herself? Silence builds, not oppressive, but exacting. Her gaze drops to the varnish on the podium, to the subtle scratches where countless hands have rested. The room is suddenly full of ordinary facts. The smell of paper, the weight of quiet, the eyes of strangers who have nothing to trade. I thought this was about a ticket, she says at last, voice thinner than before. It is, Caprio answers. A ticket is a small thing that points to a larger one. Her throat works. The practiced lines aren't coming. There's no crowd to sell. She feels the tremor first in her wrists, then in the word she can't quite form. The smile, the one that solved rooms, doesn't show up. It has nowhere to go. Caprio lets the moment stand. He doesn't rescue her, doesn't rush to fill the space. He simply waits. A man who has learned that reflection needs oxygen. No jail, no spectacle, he says finally, almost conversationally. But I will expect something true. She nods, once, then again, without trusting her voice. For the first time since the case number echoed off the walls, she looks smaller only in the sense that she has come down to human size. When she lifts her head, the bench, the seal, the flag are unchanged. She isn't. The verdict hasn't been spoken, but the trial she walked into has turned outward and settled inside her. For the briefest moment, she understands. This man isn't here to punish. He is setting the table for a change no fine can buy. Caprio doesn't reach for the gavel. He reaches for an envelope, creased once, name written in a practiced hand. Before I rule, he says, there's something you should read, Miss Vaughn. Her eyes narrow. From whom? Your father. He slides the letter to the bailiff, who brings it to the podium. Danielle's fingers hesitate on the flap, then pull the single page free. The courtroom hears paper breathe. Caprio speaks, not to dramatize, but to steady the ground. He asked that I not dismiss the charge if you're responsible. He wrote, the worst thing I taught her was that money turns walls into doors. The line lands like a cold cloth. For an instant, her composure looks borrowed. She scans the page, ink tight and unflinching. Read the next part aloud, Caprio says gently. She swallows. I built a life where she never met consequences in person. If someone can show her that life won't be bought, let it be you. A hush takes the room by the shoulders. In the back row, someone shifts and then goes stone still again. Danielle's gaze sticks to the signature. His name, a flourish she knows by sight and not by scent. She folds the letter once, then unfolds it as if the text might change. He's campaigning, she says, voice flat at first, then brittle. This looks good in a profile. The firm father who stands for accountability. He never minds the optics. Caprio doesn't move to contradict. Is that what you think this is? What else? She lifts her chin a notch, but the bravado doesn't bring its old friends. He'll read the headlines. I'll play the chastened daughter. Everybody wins a point. Or, Caprio says, softer than before, he finally realized he can't keep covering you without losing you. Her mouth opens, closes. She looks young for a heartbeat, the way a child looks when a parent forgets to smile on cue. He's never home, she says, not as an accusation but as inventory. When he is, There are staff, schedules, people whispering in hallways. We talk about polls. Caprio lets that hang. Then he sets his palms flat. Decisional. I could impose a fine and be done. You'd pay it, and it would vanish into a ledger. Exactly the sort of forgettable transaction your father just described. She waits, braced for numbers. I'm not interested in your balance, he continues. I'm interested in ballast. Her brow knots. What does that even mean? It means a weight that keeps you upright when the wind is strong. He nods toward the letter. He asked me for reality. Here it is. Tomorrow morning you'll meet me off this bench, without cameras, without handlers. We're going somewhere that measures cost differently. I don't need charity, she blurts, then hears how small the word sounds. Neither do they, he says. You won't be giving them anything. They'll be giving you context. A flicker of resentment crosses her face, the last ember of a long habit. It fades, replaced by something she doesn't readily admit to. Curiosity edged with dread. What place? She asks. A school you drove past too fast, Caprio replies. One where time is not an inconvenience, but a tool. You will stand where parents stand and listen to what it feels like to wait for a safe crossing. She considers refusing. The word rises, meets the letter in her hand, and breaks apart. If I go, she says, does it erase what I did? Nothing erases, Caprio answers, but you can write the next line differently. The clerk resumes typing, quiet, steady. Danielle folds the letter for the last time and tucks it into her jacket as if it might warm. The senator's signature presses against her ribs like an unfamiliar truth. Caprio's tone is matter-of-fact, almost kind. No speeches tomorrow, no performance, just watch, ask, and learn. Then we'll talk again. She nods once, and this time it isn't perfunctory. He picks up the next file, then sets it back down. Court stands in recess. Wooden chairs rasp the floor. The room exhales. Danielle doesn't move until most have gone, the envelope a small weight in her pocket. For the first time, she feels the difference between a consequence and a headline. Sometimes instruction arrives not as thunder, but as a closed mouth. And in that quiet, truth has the clearest voice. Morning comes gray and cool, the kind of light that keeps voices low. Caprio is waiting by the curb, jacket folded over his arm, no robe, no bench, just a man beside a crosswalk where the paint has been scuffed by countless shoes. This is where you were clocked, he says. Different when you're standing still. Minivans nose in. Doors slide. A mother lifts her son from a car seat with the choreography of practice. A father checks a harness twice, then 3 times. A boy in a wheelchair spots Danielle and lifts his hand like a flag. She lifts hers back before she remembers to be composed. They don't schedule emergencies, Caprio says. They plan for them anyway. A bus exhales. 2 aides lower a ramp, speaking to a girl whose gaze skates the horizon as if words are birds to be tracked. The crossing guard raises her sign, palms steady. Danielle's pulse sinks with the metronome of brake lights. She imagines 48 miles per hour in this hush and feels heat crawl her neck. Imagine if the brakes failed, Caprio says, or the judgment. She doesn't argue. Her breath fogs and disappears. Inside, a hallway glows with children's art. Trees that defy seasons, names printed large to announce ownership of a page. A principal in worn flats meets them, smile warm, but not ornamental. I'm Maria. Danielle shakes her hand. Thank you for letting us come. We like visitors who listen, Maria says, leading them past a therapy room where a speech pathologist kneels at eye level, working the muscles of a single word into strength. They pause at a door window. A teacher taps a picture schedule, finger traveling from icon to icon. Snack, reading, music. In the corner, a boy lines up toy cars by color, intense with purpose. He hates surprises, Maria murmurs. This hallway is designed to minimize them. Do the families ever resent drivers? Danielle asks, the word catching. They don't resent people, Maria answers. They fear speed. It steals the time their kids need. They sit in a small office that smells like dry erase and coffee. Files stack in tidy towers. On the wall, a framed photo of a graduation procession where mortar boards are replaced by paper crowns. We're not a tragedy, Maria says. We're a school. We just measure progress with different rulers. Danielle nods, unsure where to look. Do the children know adults make careless choices? They know enough to ask why, Maria says. Kids are honest auditors. Silence again, different from the courtrooms. It asks for presence, not posture. Danielle thinks of her own schedules, flights, fundraisers, flowers arranged to look like spontaneity. Here, time is not scenery. It is the lesson. A mother knocks and peeks in. Sorry, drop-off form. She smiles at Danielle as if they've met before in another life. Her wrists carry the pale crescents of sleepless nights. He loves the music room, she says, pointing a thumb down the hall. He says the drums make his chest feel brave. When she leaves, Danielle presses her lips together. I always thought money was freedom, she says quietly. A way to move faster past problems. Money is a tool, Caprio says. Freedom is how you use it when no one's watching. She looks through the glass to the crosswalk, where the guard's arm goes up again, unglamorous and absolute. The boy in the wheelchair rolls by, eager for a day that will stretch every minute to fit him. I wasn't unkind, she says, surprising herself with the confession. I was elsewhere. That's a common address, Caprio answers. It has terrible sightlines. They step outside. The late bell rings, a soft chime. The street settles into ordinary traffic. Danielle inhales the cold air until it hurts. I used power like a hall pass, she says, as if permission were permanent. Power is borrowed, Caprio says. Responsibility is owned. She nods. No camera, no quote to craft, just the sound of her own answer forming. The letter in her pocket feels less like a message and more like a mirror. She turns to the judge. I'd like to do something that takes longer than paying a bill. Good, he says, as if she's solved a small riddle. We'll talk about specifics. Not today. First, carry this place with you for a week. Let it interrupt you. She holds the picture of the ramp, the sign, the careful hands. The scene fixes in her like a pin in a map. She arrived thinking this was a sentence. She leaves knowing it's a beginning. The first honest breath she's taken in years. A week later, the courtroom feels smaller. Sun angling through high windows, dust turning in the light like slow snow. No suit of armor today. Danielle wears plain wool, hair pulled back, face bare. She holds a single sheet, edges softened from being read too many times. Case 5172, Caprio says, voice steady. Miss Vaughn has returned. She steps to the lectern. No phone, no smile deployed as cover. Your Honor, she begins, and the paper trembles once in her hand before going still. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to report. She breathes, then continues. I went to the school. I stood where I should have slowed. I saw how much effort it takes to make an ordinary day safe. What I called a minor thing is a kind of theft, of time, of margin, of peace. She lays the page flat. I've started a fund for school zone safety equipment and driver education. It's called 25. I wanted to remember the number I treated as optional. The first grants go to crossing guards gear, ramps, and a program for new drivers to volunteer at drop-off lines. I've put in my own money. I've asked donors who know my last name to match it and told them I'll publish the receipts. The murmur that rises is soft and then gone. Caprio watches without interrupting. I also wrote letters, she adds, to the officer, to the Parents' Association, not with excuses, with acknowledgments. Caprio glances toward the side door. Sergeant Miller is present. Footsteps. The officer from the video stands at the aisle end, cap in his hand. Danielle turns to face him. Her voice holds. I'm sorry, she says. Not for how it looked, for how I looked through you. I treated you like scenery. That won't happen again. He studies her for a long beat, then nods once. People change for two reasons, he says. Because they have to, or because they decide to. Decide again tomorrow. I will. Caprio leans forward, elbows on the bench. Anything else, Miss Vaughn? She looks up at him and, for the first time, sounds like someone speaking without a net. I mistook advantage for virtue, she says. I know the difference now. I don't expect credit. I expect to practice. The judge lets the room settle around that. The court recognizes the creation of the 25 initiative, he says. Your ticket carries the statutory penalty. Pay it at the window. A few heads tilt. Why the fine? He answers what they're thinking. Consequences aren't erased by charity, he says. They're joined by responsibility. Today, you met both. Danielle nods. Thank you for not yelling. Yelling is cheap, Caprio replies. Reflection is expensive. He pauses, then adds, almost like a benediction. You didn't just satisfy a statute. You made a payment to your conscience. Those accounts need tending. She allows a small, unguarded smile, one that doesn't ask for applause. I hope my father learns that, she says. For once, I'd like him proud of something that isn't our name. Perhaps he will, Caprio says. Perhaps you'll show him how. The gavel drops with a sound that isn't a slap, but a period. Months pass. A local paper runs a column above a photo of a crosswalk with fresh paint and a new flashing sign. 25 fund launches, mentorships for first-time drivers, parents praise hands-on training. A caption mentions pilot programs in 3 districts and a line of teens in yellow vests learning to hold traffic while a wheelchair rolls across. In another clip, a mother says, "We used to worry every morning. Now that sign blinks and strangers slow down." The byline is small, the story bigger than its space. Back in his chambers, Caprio files away another day's work, the ordinary heroism of routine. He thinks of a letter that told the truth late, of a daughter who chose to hear it, of a number on a metal pole that can mean the difference between routine and grief. If he were the kind to keep souvenirs, he might keep the quiet that followed her apology. Instead, he keeps a sentence for himself, the one he gives when asked what a court can do. I didn't punish her, he'd say. I held up a mirror until she recognized the person she meant to be.